Hello, and welcome to the Association Event Insider Series. We're Anna and Jessica from Connection Awakes. With a combined 40 years in the industry and over a decade of working together, including on the business event attraction team for Explore Edmonton, which is our destination marketing organization. We've had the privilege of collaborating with destinations and associations across Canada and the UK. And over the last 3 years, our consulting work has really reinforced a key truth that DMOs and CVBs need a deeper understanding of associations to successfully attract and support their events. And that's why we're launching this series, to bridge that gap with expert insights and real-world strategies. Enter Rodney Cox. The first time I came across Rodney was in ICA's Beyond Borders report, where he shared some really powerful insights on how the associations can bring basically the world together. And I immediately thought, DMs and CVBs need to know more and hear more from this guy. And so I immediately got on LinkedIn, sent one message, and then a few interactions later, here you find us. We are really going to be exploring how associations can help us to build stronger and more strategic partnerships in the business event space.
Rodney's perspective is invaluable for destinations. He's currently the founder of Delaro with over 25 years of global experience. Rodney has led conferences and exhibitions across 6 continents, working with associations to shape successful bids, events, and strategic initiatives. His expertise spans industries from energy to agriculture, and he brings a unique perspective on innovation, risk management, and the evolving dynamics of business events. As a lecturer, speaker, and industry leader, Rodney helps associations and bureaus know what they don't know when planning to bid and ensuring they engineer out problems in design and success.
Hi, Rodney. How does that sound to you?
How are you, ladies? Very nice to speak with you. And yes, between us, we're covering the world at the moment, aren't we?
Very true. We should have mentioned that. We are based in Canada. And where are you today?
I live in Sydney, Australia, and I'm in Sydney. I'm home for 6 weeks. No one's more surprised than me.
We'll always check in and see where you are, because yes, you are a bit of a globetrotter, and that definitely helps with your experience. So thank you for joining us today. We are going to be asking you a series of questions over this series, and we've done that with things that we wanted to know, but we've also crowdsourced that from our DMO contacts and CVB contacts. So we're really just going to kick off right now with our first one. So we're really concentrating on the destination selection and evaluation process in this first piece. We're looking at the strategy basically for successful prospecting. So from a DMO perspective, we often used to engage with associations with whom we had no prior relationship. But we believed that they looked like a great strong fit for our destination. What advice would you be able to offer DMOs to effectively cold prospect and establish connections with associations? On the back of that, we're interested in knowing, is it industry trade shows, farm tours, sales missions? What's the most beneficial from your perspective to initiate those relationships?
I think part of that discussion too also goes blind bidding as well, as part of that sort of dynamic. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, in the current environment, there is so much uncertainty and change about what's happening in the association sectors in North America, in the US, obviously, and how that affects the world. So some of these things we talk about have a very current flavour that may be different, how people are approaching things that might be different. I believe their uncertainty in the marketplace will create challenges for some, but opportunities for others about entering into this process. And some of the ways that may have been well established over the years, we might find there are different ways to do it. There might be better ways to do it. So keep that in mind when we talk about it. I used to make the comment years ago when I was a professional organiser that I used to try to say, let's get our bid finished before the bid's open. Once again, it's not what happens, but the mindset is important. What you're trying to say is, if you want to engage with someone, and the only way you engage with them is once you get a bid from them, or once a bid goes into the marketplace, it's a very restrictive place. It's got rules and regulations about how the bid. So engaging with people in a broader space or earlier in the process can be quite interesting. It can also be very good at understanding what they want, because one of my rules is forget what you're selling. What are they buying? Sometimes when, particularly if you're doing reasonably high volumes of blind bids. It's very easy to portray the story about what you offer as portray the story as a solution to them. So now that's one thing. So if back to your basic question about how to engage with people, you're looking for an efficiency dividend. If we talk about shows like IMEX, the one in Vegas is a more North American, obviously, one, and the one in Frankfurt's not just more European, but a bit more global as well. But who's in the room? Who do you want to engage with? And if you're going to IMEX, then I often say, especially from my trade show history, it's not just I'm going to IMEX to meet people. It's identifying who you want to meet from the list. One of the benefits of exhibiting is you find out who else is there. Who do you want to meet? So let's say there are 30 or 40 people you want to meet. The reality is, unless you're the flavour of the month, 30 or 40 people aren't going to make time to see you on a busy trade show floor like IMEX. But what you want to do, one of the tips that I do, is you contact them all with a request to meet. So you might get some. What about the others? Well, you always have them on your radar in case you see them on site at the event. So you have to have your eyes out at the event. I used to say to my teams, if we had two people at an event, if I see you talking to each other, I'll send you home. You're not there to talk to each other. You're there for serendipity. One of the big things about trade shows is serendipity. And if you work a trade show, who else is here that does yet? Oh, yes. Mary over there on that stand is also in that space. You use serendipity. And this is the value of face-to-face marketing, which we're all in. If you're face-to-face, you'll get opportunities on site that you didn't know, and you'll bump into people that were on your list but said they couldn't meet you. The next thing I often do is drop in onto the stand of the person. If you come across the person, even if you can't get to speak to them, a handshake changes everything. Don't try and say, I've got to do my sales pitch now. Relationship first. Yep. And that leads to the last point. The people that you didn't meet, or they say to you, no, I can't meet you, say, oh, okay, I'll catch up with you afterwards. So after the event is over, you're still engaging with those people. You're using the event as a door opener, not just to the people, I made 10 appointments, I've done my job. Everybody on your stakeholder list should be engaged in some way. So if you're going to use a trade show, don't think of it just as, I've got a list of appointments and that's all I do. That would be my tip in that space. If you're going to do familials or sales missions, doing them cold, why does someone want to see you? I sometimes have the luxury coming from Sydney in Australia to say, oh, I'm coming to Toronto or I'm coming to London, and people will see you because you're coming along. Sometimes the further you go, the more respectful people will be of limited time to see you. But one of the things I do say is if you have warm leads that you're trying to move forward and you're going to see them through a sales mission, the next question is, who else in that city do I want to see? You never fly for one place for one purpose. What a waste of resources. We're all talking about resources and sustainability. And you have a list of other people. So you have a sort of waiting list of people. And once again, you invite them, say, oh, look, I'll be in DC in this week in May. I'd love to catch up to you. And when you say you want to catch up to you, you don't want to catch up with them and tell them how good your place is. No.
Yeah.
No one cares. As I said, I never want to see a bid document that tells me you've got happy people. I don't care. What happens is I'd like to catch up to see what's happening in your world and what matters to you. That's the angle. It's always what are they buying? And remember, if it's not the bid phase, it's relationship building and client understanding. And so by changing that dynamic, the meeting is also less threatening. It doesn't sound like I'm coming to do a sales pitch. The more hard-nosed you are about doing a sales pitch, the less I want to see you. It's like when you watch the dating shows. People keep saying, stop talking about yourself and start asking the other person about themselves, because everybody wants to talk about themselves. So that's the trick. So you get this list of people. You invite them to say, I'm coming to DC or where it happens to be. Could we catch up because I'd like to find out what's important in your world and what the dynamics are changing. They might say no, but you're still building a relationship. The invitation, everything is about building the relationship so that sooner or later you are not a mystery to them. They know who you are. Does that make sense? And it makes it easier. When things come along, you're more likely to be on their radar. Bidding is both an objective and a subjective decision. So when it comes to bidding, you need to think about having relationships with people and building them outside of the environment. Now, here's the bid document. Here are the rules. In various events that I've been involved with, once the bid's open, no lobbying, can't talk to anything, you manage the form, no communication other than by email, and so everything closes in on you. So the world's a freer pace beforehand. So there's a couple of tips. Why does someone want to come in and familial if they're not already interested in you as a place to run it. The familiar is not going to be the thing that converts it. Guess what? You've got a venue and hotel rooms. Wow. And you want me to inspect the hotel rooms. It's the most boring thing in the world, inspecting hotel rooms. I do it out of respect for the people who are working hard to try and sell their city. But I often make the joke, I only want to see your hotel rooms if you don't have them. Does that make sense? If you've got a venue and you've got hotels, the game is more nuanced than that. It's what does it mean for them? I talk about three things: infrastructure, integration, and stakeholder or delegate experience. They're the three things I look for when I go to a venue. Does that make sense? So the subjective bits, and the first one is the bit that most people think they're selling, but you're actually selling the last two. Okay.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's true.
It is true. Put a point up here that's very good for us because we're passionate about it. We like to say you juice the lemon wherever you go. So you have really helped to reiterate that and building out that. We love that. Yes,
and
thank you.
It's personal career development. It's meet people and say hi to the people that you don't know if they're going to be important to you in the future. And it's amazing how 2 years later you'll go, oh, I know Mary, I met her somewhere. There's the ways the door opens. It's great for your own career. We'd like to think that whoever you work for, you're going to work for them for your whole life. But the reality is 2 or 3 years later, you'll be working somewhere else. So you think about relationships and you become open to people for relationships, but you also make sure that you don't close the door on people who are not an immediate customer. Everyone in the industry is going to come across you somewhere sooner or later. So be nice to everybody.
We're going to shift gears a little bit. Typically, destinations rotate through cities. How does a destination get on your radar? How important is airlift in an international association's host destination decision?
Let's start with airlift, which was a term we were chatting about the other day, and I'm going, I think I know what it means, but it sounds very North American. Assume nothing. Terms don't always mean the same thing. We were only chatting about this the other day for one of my clients. I made the comment that there's 3 airline groups in the world. We all know the 3 major groups. Most people fly with one or the other. Most people are independent travelers these days. It depends on the personality of your show. If everybody's flying business class, that's quite different than if everybody's flying economy or coach. It's okay. You need to think about that. But generally speaking, you need to be connected to a hub. You either are a hub yourself. If you're Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, you're probably a hub. But if you're Calgary or Edmonton or somewhere like that, you are one flight away from a hub. And that hub needs to take people to where they need to go. In a perfect world, you want, be careful, direct flights are not the same thing as non-stop flights. That's a really important thing to understand. You really want somebody to be able to get on a plane and only change once. Either go non-stop, direct on the same ticket, or a transfer with the same airline group, because nobody wants to transfer outside of it. They want one ticket, even if they're changing to another airline within a group. Otherwise, the problem is, if there's a problem in the first flight and you miss the second flight, it's your problem. So that continuity of certainty, and people feel comfortable. There are major hubs. If you're flying, I've flown into Calgary, for example. I've never been to Edmonton. My apologies. But by coincidence, in the last couple of years, I've overseen events in Vancouver and Banff, which are really quite interesting because one's a big hub city and the other one's quite a regional small town. The reality was I could get to Calgary from Sydney, as an example, with one stop. I could go Vancouver, Calgary. I could go San Francisco, Calgary. Once I'm there, I'm on the ground, and the mindset's different when you're on the ground. So it's never perfect, okay? But think about what it is to be the traveler. And it comes back to this point about understand your audience. If you forget what you're selling, what are they buying? Where are they coming from? Because the culture, most industries are weighted, some are not. An industry that's not weighted often makes you a good bidder for anybody because they're coming from everywhere. But if an industry itself has certain hubs, if an industry is weighted in the industrial section, if the industry is weighted in Houston and Singapore and let's say London, then you're going, okay, how do we fly from that place? And also the reality is that people who live in further away places understand they have to probably transit more than once. So if you're coming from Kenya, you might expect it, although Kenya's probably a good example, they're a great hub in Africa, but if in the energy sector, there are a bunch of countries that are very involved in energy, but they're not easily connected to the rest of the world. Make sure you understand where the clients for that event are coming from and make sure you put the proposal to face that. I'll finish up by saying, what I often say to people, particularly if you're bidding for an event that your city is involved with the industry, don't draw a map of the world, draw an industry map of the world. They're not the same thing. So if you're in mining, for example, where are the people involved who are in mining, and you dot them around the world and you go, that's my challenge. just the general world. And it also means you understand more and you present better because you're talking their language. That's the easy thing to do and turns the whole story around to we understand what you need. Is that useful?
Brilliant. Yeah, love that. And Rodney, you've really brought up a good question, I think, for a lot of DMOs to actually ask the question to the associations, where are your delegates typically coming from?
Yeah.
And just get that on the table right from the start. And that helps the narrowing down process.
Yeah, correct. And I see some terrible RFPs issued. This is not always, honestly, you can see RFPs that have been issued by a committee where the grammar, sometimes the spelling will change in the one document. And you can see Fred was responsible for this and Mary was responsible for that. And you go, really? And the left, and it just doesn't read well. I love them. If I ever see those, I'm going, wow, that's going to create an opportunity to solve a problem they don't know they have. Does that make sense? Because you're all, one of the things I always say too is find out what the rules are bidding for and then change them. You have to comply with the bid. But if you can't add some value that's not in the outgoing information, then you're just another bit of going through the motions and plugging in the numbers. Hopefully that talks a little bit about that point as well.
Yes, thank you. We're interested, Rodney, because a lot of DMOs and CBBs put a lot of work into their champions or their ambassador programs. In your perspective and experience, how much do you rely on local champions and ambassadors when you're making a decision on a host destination?
I've worked with lots of different associations who have completely different models for how they make the selection. Everything from all members vote in a room, press a button, it comes up on the screen. That's pretty ruthless.
Yep.
Oh, you got one vote. How did you manage to get one? That sort of, it can leave a trail of, I'm a bit different. If you're working in an association and your members are bidding, global association, national associations are bidding, you're going to have a bunch of losers and they're your members. I tend to have a softer approach. You're holding the hands of the ones who are going to lose. It's just as important as the ones who are going to win. But understanding how and who makes the decision and how and who you are allowed to lobby or not lobby. I'm currently working with events where you can lobby and another event where you can't. A completely different dynamic. And also a little bit there about the being shortlisted or being finalised. And sometimes the role of the ambassador or the champion becomes more relevant when you are shortlisted because now you're into your point of difference. If there's going to be a shortlist, you can argue that the first round is really almost compliance. Are they capable of doing this? Do they tick the boxes on infrastructure, integration, stakeholder? When you move into a second round of bidding, then it becomes more nuanced. Now, is an ambassador or a champion going to swing the vote? That's the question I'd ask. Sometimes your ambassador is not as well known outside the country as you might think. If you're wanting to play in the international market, do not assume that the big kid on the block in your city, they might be a big frog in a small puddle. They mightn't be, they mightn't have the same profile around the world. And they need to have context. You know, if there's no context, it's just someone with a face who's well known going, come to my city. Why? And there's a little bit of that when it's celebrity status. I think the more fundamental thing is to say everything you do in a bid, everything you do has to go against your checklist of what you're trying to achieve. And one of the things I say is write your checklist of what you want first and then shop around and go, that's best answered by statistical information. That's a testimonial. This one could be a demographic. This one could be someone who's being a champion. But starting with a champion and trying to retrofit them is the wrong way round to go about it. There's no context. Put their smiling face on page 27 of the appendix as opposed to being the front person. If they're not going to deliver you with a vote, don't put them up the front.
Thank you. Very helpful insider information, which is what we were expecting from you. So thank you.
Yeah.
So as an association events director, what are your KPIs, your key performance indicators? Do you measure success more by revenue generation or membership growth?
Revenue generation is a blunt tool for success. So I quite like because it's a shorthand way of going, did we meet financial metrics when that mean more people? Does that make sense? Particularly if you're very conference driven and most of your money's coming from sponsors or delegates, then more delegate revenue means more delegates, which is down to success. I often make the comment that the single most important thing about a great program is not what happens on site. I've almost lost interest by the time you get on site. The single most important thing about a great program is to get you to register in the first place. If you don't come, you don't get it. So forcing yourselves to go upstream a bit. And one of the indicators is, can we get the program, the hook into the marketplace? Marketing 101 says, target audience. Who are your audiences? We use a phrase to describe people. We've got 3 or 4 groups that are key audiences. They're not all buying the same thing. So that's the first thing. So one of the key indicators I go is, do we have a product that is suitable for our 3 or 4 major audiences? And how do we present that product differently to those different audiences? To me, that's one of the key performance indicators. Do we generate the outcomes we need at the time people are making the booking? For an awful lot of industries, if you're having someone register, they will get that information by an email or by social media or on the website, but to get to the website, they've had to receive something. People don't spend their day randomly looking at websites. It's going to come through a social media link, or it's going to come through an email. And when they get that, and when they go on their phone or laptop, you've got how long before they decide yes or no? And you never speak to them.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a number. If you're trying to get 1,000 delegates, you might sell to the top 50 or 100, but you're going to market to all the rest of them. And the first delegate sale is order taking. They always come.
Yeah.
The 1,000th delegate has never been before, wasn't in the industry last time you arrived, probably doesn't know about the conference. You're selling them a different product and you never speak to them. Some of the key indicators that you're looking for there are all about what happens before the event. This is why I put a lot of emphasis on this. Success is 3 months out when the program goes out. If the program doesn't have a target audience and a hook, then you're asking people to come together for a coffee. That's right. And it's a long way to go to have a cup of coffee. I also speak about a thing called My Brains, which is just a phrase I made up. But it says, what flows from that is associations have objectives, and then associations have strategies. And the association strategies lead to the event objectives. There's a flow.
Yeah.
If an association doesn't know their strategies, it's very difficult to set the objectives for their event. So what are their objectives? And once again, I'm a big one on checklists, and you might decide not to do all of these things, but I run this through the checklist, and this is the indicator. And My Brain stands for membership, industry, branding, revenue, advocacy, innovation, networking, education, and society. And that's your checklist. And you go, is the event contributing to those things? Now, it's a valid answer to say we don't want it to. You might be running a technical event and advocacy is not the point, but the list is the important thing. And saying no is still a decision. If you don't have a framework to go, what other objectives, what key performance indicators do we want to get from our event, then you'll be just whatever comes to the top of your head. You'll be running tactics instead of strategies. So I have checklists for everything. And that checklist is really useful because if you say membership, what is your membership objective? Is it servicing your members? Is it an opportunity for people to come and become members? Do you become really creative and include membership in their registration? Lots of things. But unless you ask the question, what membership objective do we want? Then you'll just do what you did before.
And so on that one, Rodney, I'm assuming that you believe that DMOs and CBB should be asking that question to associations, digging deep right from the initial conversations to understand the objectives so they can match their offering, as you were talking about.
Before COVID, I spoke at ICA in IMEX in Las Vegas, and I was there representing the association. There was somebody from a bureau in Houston and a venue in London. My pitch was, this is to associations. The bureau is not your best friend. And ICA said, you can't say that. And I said, let's see how many people pay attention. And my point at the end of it was, if you as an association, either the host association or the bidding association, depending on where you're engaging, if you give them vanilla information, they can only support you with vanilla outcomes. You need to raise the expectation of what you get from a bureau. If I'm ruthless about some bureaus around the world, they are so process driven. It's almost like we're churning through the process and we've just got to keep pedaling faster to get our hit rate. I argue if you get a 20% hit rate, just pick a number of success. If you got a 22% hit rate of success, it sounds like it's only 2% more, but it's 10% more business for you. Because 22 is 10% bigger than 20. So you're getting 20, but you go to 22. If you could say at the beginning of the year, we can build in a 10% increase in our business, everyone would say yes. So therefore, how do you get that manageable gap? To me, this is not an extreme gap. And one of the ways you do it is to better brief, better understand, take the time to go, do I understand the personality, the profile, the persona of these people so that I can help myself when I'm issuing the bid, I can help myself if I'm responding to the bid, and I can brief the Bureau better. Otherwise, what they do is they just pump out, we've got 2,000 seats and we're going to yawn. I don't care. I care if you don't have it, but if you do have it, it doesn't get you the job. The getting you the job bit is the intangible, subjective, what it means to me for my delegates to come there bit, not do you have enough rooms, enough shuttle buses.
And how would you recommend they find some of this information about the association and the persona, apart from the relationship building, the stuff that might be not as easy to find online?
I am gobsmacked how poorly some people do that. Remember, an association exists 365 for a whole range of purposes, and run an event once every 365, once every 720, once every 1,000 and something, depending if it's annual, biennial or triennial. And that, remember my objectives, strategies, objectives thing, you're trying to work out, do I understand the strategies of this association? Any association that's worth its salt is going to have that on its website, in its manifesto. It's going to have it somewhere. I'm an old guy, so print it out and read it. I don't care what technology you use. But the point is, own it. Be able to do it. And it doesn't need to take hours or weeks. But what I do suggest to bureaus, DMOs, is to automate it into your process. One of your checklist things is, do we understand from their website or their previous event history, can we say what are the 3 or 4 most important things to them? Yeah. And if you want to get really clever, what are the 3 or 4 most important things to them unrelated to the event? What's the 3 or 4 most that they get up in the morning that they exist? A subset could be what are the 3 or 4 most important things they want to get out of their event. Because if you're clever, it'll change the way you word things. A lot of blind bids might be tick the boxes and fill it out, but somewhere you'll have the opportunity to make your statement about you. And if your statement about you is just, please read the document because we said we're fabulous, wasted opportunity. If the document is, we understand these things are important to your association and believe for these reasons we can add value to that, then suddenly I'm the reader going, oh, you've paid some attention to who I am. Back to my dating model. With that one.
Yeah,
thank you.
Love that. Rodney, you're giving us some really good insights. And I think it is a case of just maybe changing slightly the practices, now knowing a little bit more of behind the scenes. That's what we were looking for. So thank you. We're going to have to round out with the hot topic question. What have you heard lately in your groups and your networks? Are international organisers still interested in coming to Canada right now?
If I put my non-USA hat on, let's start with that. Yeah. What's happening is large amounts of uncertainty are being generated out of the US into the association sector and into the business events sector. Okay. And from a US perspective, leaving aside the politics of it, the reality of it is a lot of associations in the US are under pressure to not do things they've traditionally done. DEI is one of those. They're also losing attendance because federal employees are not allowed to come to events, even in the US or externally. That's all uncertainty. What do we learn from COVID? Uncertainty stops decision making. But I think there's a different dynamic here because a lot of this uncertainty has been created in one place. And if you can create certainty outside of that place, it's just a maelstrom in the US at the moment. I find it really interesting having run events in the US and Canada, but being neither. I come from Australia. So at face value, you would think, oh, we're all Western speaking, first world democracies, everything's the same. The USA is completely different than anywhere else in the world. I find it interesting how much of that has bled into Canada and how much hasn't. And there are some things I would say to DMOs and bureaus in Canada is, don't just assume you are either the same as the US or different from. You probably are chameleons. And when you're bidding for events in the US, you want to sound North American because you want to be, oh, that's really simple. Assuming you've got a passport, it's just easy to get to. But if you're going to be talking to destinations, host associations, owner associations, bidding from outside of Canada, then I think your angle is, what's your point of difference to the US? And at the moment, what do Canadians have a reputation for in the world? Being polite. Absolutely. Run with that. And think about what that means from a political point of view, an economic point of view, a cultural point of view, a personal safety point of view, all of those things. Be a point of difference marketer, because if you're just trying, you don't have to sell the negative of somebody else. But I'd be saying, in a time of uncertainty, if you're looking for political stability, economic stability, regulation stability, business event stability, then Canada is your place. That would be the argument if I was Canadian. If I'm Australian, I probably have a slightly different argument, but they would all go to this same point. At a time of uncertainty, we can help you with certainty.
Yes.
Now, there's 4 years of this administration. Once again, good, bad, wrong, not my call. But 4 years that looks like it'll be uncertain. And people are making windows of decisions for bids for 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. There's probably nobody in the world who isn't in bid mode once or twice during this administration. And you ask yourself, how do I present myself to being different? If I make a comment about some of the comments in the Australian press, and people talk about, do you want to go to holiday in America? And overwhelmingly the response was, somebody nailed it for everybody and got the most likes on the newspaper article, and they said, you can fly direct to Canada. That was it. That was the answer to going and having a North American holiday. Now, if I'm talking to my North American colleagues, would I be giving them the same advice? No, probably different advice. They've got to try and create a dynamic of certainty so that international people who are either attending at, you hear stories about Canadians going, this is coming up in the chatter in the US, going, they don't want to come to our event. They volunteer at our event and they don't want to come. Now, be careful, because America can be very parochial and they might decide we don't want to come to an event in Canada. So it could flow in both directions. But if you're talking about international organisations who are neither Canadian or US, I think your North American story is a different story than what the USA's North American story is. They've got different challenges and opportunities, but there you go.
Love that.
Thank you.
You've given us some great insights, as we knew you would, Rodney. There's some brilliant takeaways. We will certainly be pulling out some takeaways when we're talking to our DMO clients as well from you. And of course, this is just one in a series. We do have some future topics coming up, but we're also very interested in our audience and what they would like to hear from you. Please get in touch. Let us know if there's burning questions that you would like to put Rodney on the hot seat for. As you can tell, he is not short of words, so we will be able to answer anything that you need. We'll be back to you with another episode very soon. Thank you for this insights today, Rodney. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. See you later. Bye.
Thank you.